The first thing you need when you're splitting wood is a nice axe. I like this little K-axe that we make, and we also make a nice wilderness axe that looks like this. It's double-headed and a little heavier. The second thing to keep in mind is the structure of the wood. And when determining or examining the structure of the wood, the most important thing is to remember this. It all starts with the center of the tree. Trees grow, as everybody knows, in rings. They start out with the center of the tree, which is technically called the heart center, and the rings get bigger and bigger as the tree grows. When you cut wood and dry it out for your fireplace, the first thing that happens is it loses moisture content, and the wood shrinks as a result. And it's the outer rings that shrink the most because they're the longest. And when they shrink, they create cracks. For example, you can see this crack that radiates all the way down the side of this log. And the other thing about it is the crack radiates in and it points directly at the center of the tree. All of these cracks, in fact, that you can see in this log all point basically towards the center of the tree. And they create weak spots. And the center of the tree is the weakest spot of all. The other thing to remember is knots. You want to avoid knots when you're splitting wood. Almost all wood has knots, so it's hard to avoid. But the thing to remember is that you cannot split knots because the orientation of the grain of knots is contrary to the grain of the wood that you're splitting. So if you'll notice, you have all these cracks that radiate down, but for example, here's a little knot and the crack goes around the knot, but it doesn't go through it. So the weak spots are where these cracks are, for starters, and noticeably they are not where the knots are, they're where the knots are not. So those are the two things that you want to exploit.